As we head into the final year of Atlas 3, one of our focuses is on missing species. Our goal is to find 90% or more of the species reported in Atlas 2 during this atlas. We use this as a proxy to make sure we get all the major habitat types covered in a given square. The purpose of this video is to show you a couple of ways to identify species gaps. There are two approaches, doing it at a square level or doing it at the species level. Let's start with the square approach. For this, we want to use the square summary sheet. To find a square summary sheet, head to the Tools and Resources menu, find Mapping Resources, and then select Square Resources. Now you need to find your square. You can do so by clicking the Find Square button, entering your square ID, and then clicking Find Square. That'll zoom you in on the map. Or you can just use the map to navigate and zoom in to the area that you're interested in. Once you've selected your square, once you've zoomed in enough, it should highlight the square boundaries, and this current Atlas Square ID will pop up. Once you've got the square you're interested in, find the View Square Summary Sheet option down in the bottom right. Click it and it'll open up a square summary sheet. This is what a typical square summary sheet looks like. It's got some overall stats for the square, some overall stats for the region, and then a detailed species list with some information for each species. Let's pay special attention for this purpose for the total number of species reported in the current atlas, which is 112 in this square, and the total number of species reported in the previous atlas, 132. So in this case, we're missing about 20 species from this square that were reported in the last atlas. Now let's focus on the species list. We'll see a list of all the species, as well as a previous column, a code column, and a percentage column. These are important columns to understand what they represent. The previous column represents the highest level of breeding evidence reported on the previous atlas. The code column represents the highest level of breeding evidence reported in the current atlas. And then the percentage column represents the percentage of squares in this atlas region that have reported this species. So in this case, we're talking about Peterborough, or region number 16. So in Canada Goose, the previous atlas had a highest breeding evidence of nests with young. In the current atlas, the highest breeding evidence is fledged young. And then in this current atlas, 86% of the squares in the Peterborough region, or region number 16, have reported breeding evidence for Canada Goose. Now, one more thing to pay attention to. Some of the species are going to be highlighted in bold text. Those are species that have been reported in this square with breeding evidence. Some of the species are going to be underlined, such as this American woodcock. The underline represents a species that has not been reported yet in this atlas in this square, but it has been reported in at least 50% of the squares in this atlas region. So in the case of the American woodcock, 76% of squares within Peterborough region have reported breeding evidence for American woodcock, but is missing in this square. So these are meant to highlight species that would be highly likely to be found in this particular square, because they've been also found in a lot of squares in the nearby squares in this region. Now, to find which other species might be missing, all you need to do is go through the list, and you can quickly find species like blue-winged teal or mallard or ringneck duck, where there's breeding evidence in the last atlas, but none so far in this atlas. So what you can do is make a separate note, noting the species that are currently missing. Often you'll find things like this, where you have a few duck species or a few marsh birds, or often it's birds of a similar habitat that are all missing from a similar square. And that just simply indicates that somebody hasn't spent some time in that particular habitat type. So make your list, and then you can get on your way and see if you can target some of those habitats or some of those species with some atlas surveys. Now, it's important to note that this square summary sheet is updated every 24 hours, and it will tell you at the very bottom when it was last updated. So in this case, it was updated May 6th, 2025 at 7:43 in the morning, so we'll know how current this particular sheet is. All right, next let's cover the species-specific approach. Maybe you want to see if there's any gaps nearby a particular area that are for a very specific species. So for this, let's head back to the home on our home page. Again, we're going to go to Tools and Resources, Mapping Resources, and we want to head to the Interactive Species Map. Your map will load. The first time you do this, it won't have all this information filled in. You're going to have to select the species. So in this case, I've selected ruffed grouse. You just start typing the species and wait for it to pop up. You also need to select the project you're interested in this case, Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas. And then also, very importantly, you need to select the years you're interested in. So if you're just interested in Atlas 3, which is what we're doing right now to find gaps for this particular species in Atlas 3, you need to make sure that your years specify Atlas 3 years. So starting in 2021, ending in 2025. Otherwise, you're going to get records from all the different Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas projects, Atlas 1, Atlas 2, etc. Once you've selected everything, make sure you click Apply. Now, the map is going to load up once you hit that, and at first it's going to be showing you these Atlas blocks. These are 100 by 100 kilometers. As you zoom in, it'll switch to Atlas squares. Zoom in a little more here. There we go. Now we're seeing Atlas squares, and you'll see they're color-coded. So they're color-coded based on the category of breeding evidence. So yellow squares are ones that have possible breeding evidence as the highest evidence code. Orange are ones that have the highest breeding evidence code being a probable code. And red are squares that have highest level of breeding evidence being confirmed. So it's very simple. We want to zoom in, and you might see gray squares as well. Those are ones where the species has been reported but without breeding evidence. It's very simple though. Once you've loaded this up, you can move the map around, zoom in on a particular area. So I'm going to zoom in on the Peterborough area, and I see, oh boy, there's a bunch of squares just to the east of Peterborough, a whole group of them that are missing this particular species, ruffed grouse. If I click on a particular square, I can see the square ID, 18TTQ82. I can get a bit of data. So in the eBird data set from the years 2013 to 2024, there are 20 records with highest breeding evidence of D. And in Atlas 2, there was, between 2002 and 2004, there's 3 records with the highest level being fledged young. And there might be some other data from other data sets that are kept in nature counts. So we use this. You could write down, okay, that square here, 18TTQ82 and 18TTQ83. I'm going to target those, for example, and go out and see if I can find a ruffed grouse in those squares in the next few days. So this is another way that you can use to target species gaps. If there's a particular species you're interested in, and going and seeing how many squares you can add it to that it's currently missing too, that would be great. So these are 2 approaches that you can use to find missing species in Atlas squares. We hope you'll spend some time this year filling in some of these gaps for us. The nice thing is you can fill some of these now. You don't have to wait until peak season begins.